Peace to the room. Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm just Eve, and tonight we're having a discussion that I think a lot of you would like to at least listen to, if not participate in some form or fashion. We're at war. I don't know if you knew, or maybe you did, but probably just in case you didn't, war is a state of armed conflict between different nations or states or different groups within a nation or state. And a side note, just because you aren't armed doesn't mean you aren't at war. Depending on who you ask, World War III has already begun, a class war of sorts. And I know class and race are a hot ticket topic to debate and has been over the years, but tonight I don't really want to stop there. I want to talk about the two groups, the originals and the copies. If you've been paying attention, you would know that sometimes the copy they've been looking one way, but the people on those sides of things, they've gotten savvy. The ability to be in more than one space has been a gift and a curse. Duplicity. Tonight I want to talk about doubles and triples. I want to talk about war. Covert, overt, all of it. War. And why talk about it if we aren't talking about how to win? And before the scaredy cats in the room start whining about make love, not war, ask yourself, does the math? And if it does, then I guess you're good. No fighting for you. Might be best for you to stay out the way. But if it doesn't, well, what is it that the professor tells us? When we fight, we win. Yes, winning. How to win? Well, y'all know I'm just Eve and I'm not the authority on things as much as I have thoughts on things, and maybe you do too. And y'all know constructive conversations in these spaces is something I do my best to adhere to. And sometimes it does get a little wild, but tonight I thought it'd be best to learn. We can't talk about winning a war if we aren't powerful. So I guess I wanted to talk about war and power with someone in our community who's respected, more knowledgeable, holds class every weekday at 7 a.m. on his YouTube channel. I'm going to post it in the jumbo. Professor, welcome back. Thank you for joining me tonight. Professor, are you there? We just had such a successful test space. I would hate for X to be messing us up already out the gate. Well, as you can see, I guess X saw that we were gonna do something productive tonight, and it was like, no, not for y'all niggas. Y'all niggas over there, y'all be doing too much. Professor, are you black? Not black. Are you back? There we go. You're back, and we can hear you loud and
Messing with me, is
clear.
that what it is?
He's so musty. I
That little
can't with him.
unreconstructed apartheid reject, I swear, man. I say he better be glad for black folks. If it wasn't for black folks, he would still be shoveling crap somewhere in Holland with the rest of his folk. You know, that's what he would be doing if it wasn't for black folks. But as I was saying before, Elon Musk interrupted us. By the way, he can't even conduct his own Twitter space. Him and Ron DeSantis, that cluster foul up was the stuff of legend. But as I was saying, though, war is the continuation of politics by alternative means. And that being the case, there's multiple forms of politics because the pure definition of politics is the distribution of power in any given setting. So you can have office politics, you can have family politics, bedroom politics, which, as Dr. John Henry Clark said, black folks to this day still don't understand. And you can have electoral politics, which is the politics that most people think of because that's the way that the term is usually used. But the truth of the matter is, it's all politics. Any place where you have a setting where people are vying for position, that's politics. And the thing about black people is we're basically floating through it casually. We're in the middle of a war zone trying to be casual. And that's why so many of us become casualties. So it is absolutely imperative that we study warfare because that's what's happening. And so many black folks are running around unarmed. They're thinking to themselves, I'm presenting myself as no threat. No, what you're presenting yourself as is an easy target. We cannot afford to be like that. Everybody else is out here competing. Everybody else is out here fighting. I'm not saying that black folks need to go scorched earth, but god dang it, we better ante up and get ready to knuckle up and do what we got to do to make sure that our people stay on this earth. You have a situation now where you got states who are teaching that slavery was a good thing for black people. Now, when somebody does that, that's straight Nazi Germany talk. That's the talk of these people need to be subjugated because that's what follows. And then afterwards, there was a mass murder that took place in Ron DeSantis' Florida. Now, black folks did what they were supposed to do in the beginning. They showed up and they said, we're mad as hell, it's time to fight. And then they let the bunny ruckus down there, Jacoby Pittman. They let her put on her tap dancing shoes. Y'all don't be shouting down Massa now. Y'all just need to let him say his piece. He don't mean no problems. Let's hear what he had to say. We've been listening to Ron DeSantis for a damn long time, too long. It's time to tell him to sit the hell down and shut the hell up. That's the problem. Black people, when it's time for us to fight, we're consistently inconsistent. All it takes is one or two bootlicks to put on the tap dance shoes and we pipe down and quiet down. That's why these white supremacists keep these bootlicks around, because unfortunately it works. Not all the time, but it works a hell of a lot more than it should. So Sister Eve is absolutely right. We are in a doggone war. And it's one that we have largely been losing, not because we have to, but because black people have chosen we'll fight for about 5 minutes. And then a second that we see the bad guys look like they're kind of on the defensive, we put down the arms and say, okay, I guess they got the point. That ain't how it works. When you start the process of destruction, you must destroy completely. When you're out to dismantle white supremacy, you can't just sit here and give the bad guys a bloody nose or go ahead and give them a couple of knots on the head. No, what's supposed to happen is the bad guy's supposed to be disintegrated. You're supposed to be making sure that when you're done, there's not going to be another fight because you've made it impossible for the enemy to continue fighting. Now, when that's the mindset that we take up, and when we decide that we're going to shout down these bunny ruckuses and these Uncle Toms and the rest of these clowns who come among us and tell us we need to let Massa speak, forget that. We show respect to those who show respect to us. Respect is the foundation of all human interaction. Without respect, the only thing you have is conflict. And when somebody spends years, what amounts to decades, impugning us, calling out our integrity, claiming that we're inferior, and saying we're going to teach the kids that these people should be in chains, that is somebody declaring war on you. Now, when you got some piece of inbred trash like Ron DeSantis, who decides that he's going to start saying part of the educational curriculum is going to be that slavery was a good thing for black people, that's somebody who, at that point, what do you say? Do you say, well, let me go ahead and debate with you whether or not I should be in chains? No, there's not going to be a debate. There's not going to be a discussion. He has decided that his version of politics is going to take the form of warfare. And when somebody decides to wage war on you, you wage war back. Every single time that black people have fought, I mean really fought, when we decide that we're going to put on the bandoliers, we're going to put on our boots, put on the helmets, and it's time to mix it up. Every single time that we have fought, I mean for real fought, we have won. And I guess that's part of the problem. Black people have this false sense of security that because of the fact that on the few occasions we've actually bothered to actually wage all-out war on white supremacy, we have been able to win. We think to ourselves that basically we have the luxury of not necessarily knuckling up on them, and that's not true. The bad guy is in charge. We're sitting here taking casualties every day. We're taking pot shots every day. And we got some people out here telling us that we need to find new and inventive ways to be friends with the Ron DeSantis of the world. Right now, Ron DeSantis has got his little deal going where they're going to be running black folks out of these cities in Florida altogether. This is ethnic cleansing American style. It's not like what you see in Nazi Germany. It's not like what you see in other places. In the United States, they use economics to do it. Economics is the foundation of the distribution of resources. We are being starved for resources, which, by the way, is how most genocides take place. Most genocides do not occur the way the Nazis did it. Typically, genocides take place through resource deprivation. You take a look at what happened to the people of Tasmania. Those white supremacists, it completely exterminated those people. There is no one alive today who can claim to be a descendant of the original Tasmanian people. The white supremacists completely and thoroughly exterminated them, down to the last child. And how did they do it? Resource deprivation. Starve them for resources. did not let these people have even a moment to put down roots and start to rebuild their communities, constantly herding them around like cattle. Human beings are very delicate creatures. If you start depriving people of our basic necessities, food, water, shelter, medicine, stability, it's not going to take years for those people to die out. It's going to take months. And what the white supremacists did in Tasmania, they repeated in several other places around the world. Hell, even amongst other Caucasoids people, like the Armenian genocide. You probably hear about that occasionally. What did the Turks do to the Armenians? What they did was they ran them up into the hills. And then what happened was when winter came, the people tried to come down from the hills. The Turks simply shot them when they came down. They were subjected to resource deprivation. And what have they been doing to black people in the United States? Resource deprivation. Now, what do you do when somebody has decided they're going to be taking things from you? What you don't do is you don't say, let me be polite to this guy. What you do is you decide, God dang it, I'm taking it back by any means necessary. We are irresistible as a people when we put down our foot and say it's either going to be this or else. But that's what's been missing. What is the or else? We seem to have this very vague idea of what the or else should be, but we haven't made it clear. But I'll tell you right now, if black people decide to be honest with themselves about the situation that they're in, they will also stop being bashful about making it clear exactly what the or else is. And once these white supremacists and these other anti-black racists, by the way, our anti-black racism is a hell of a lot bigger than just these white supremacists. There's a whole lot of people who are not classified as white who hate black people as much as the day is long. And the answer to that is, let's stop looking for allies, stop looking for friends. We got something better than that. We got family. When we start looking to each other for what it is that we need, including our strength, including our economy, including our common defense, we're going to start having answers to a whole lot of problems that we've been facing. But that begins, first of all, with showing respect, the foundation of all human interaction, showing respect for each other, and then from there, being honest with the situation that we have with people outside the community. If you're under attack, you got to face that. And then you got to decide, okay, I'm going to stop these forces of antagonism. And you know what? That's a good thing. Black people have this idea that fighting is somehow just the epitome of evil. No, it's not. Unprovoked aggression, unprovoked violence is the epitome of evil. But if somebody's sitting here hitting you, when you decide to hit back, that becomes divine. That's the reason why, for those of you who like your Bibles, and I know there's a few of you here who like your Bibles, that's fine. Nothing wrong with the Bible, as long as you decide to pay attention to the verses that empower you instead of ignoring them. The Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Now, how many of you ever thought of vengeance as a divine emotion? Maybe you should. It's very important to me when I started doing my daily briefings for the family. Why did I switch to that format? Because I wanted to say a heck of a lot of things, a lot more things that I could say in 2 days, even if I took 45 minutes to expand on it. It was important to me to say as many things as possible. But if there is one thing, one consistent theme of all of the videos that I've ever done, I would hope that people take away from it that I want you to fight. I want you to fight with every means that you've got. Fight with the strength of spirit. Fight with your will. Resist every chance that you get. Fight the enemy mentally. Fight the enemy ideologically. And if somebody decided they're going to harm you physically, then you fight physically. Now, this is not going to be a kind of popular talk because we've had a lot of black folks who basically are looking for an excuse not to have to contend either for their share of the world that they're supposed to have, or if somebody comes up to you and decides to bully you off of your land, bully you out of your resources, well, I'm hoping that I can talk to this guy and get him to relinquish what he stole. I got a better idea. Let the guy know that if he does not unhiney what he took from you, then you will make him to do so. And you know what? That actually works. It's the only thing that has. Why were the 2020 uprisings so successful? And when I say successful, I mean that they actually produced things. We didn't need a single election, and yet all of a sudden the same prosecutors who said they couldn't prosecute the cops, they started doing it. How did that happen? It happened because they saw what the or else was. And people can say, oh, you're threatening. No, not threatening. This is not about threats. This is about reality. And the reality is, when your back is to the wall, you're going to fight your way out of that corner. But what I want is for black people not to wait until their backs are to the wall. Because if that happens too many times, sooner or later your luck runs out. The enemy has your back to the wall, and this time they've actually got you. Maybe this time you can't fight your way out of it. Don't you think it's better that we not wait until it gets that far? Don't you think that the second that somebody tries to make you take a step back, maybe right then and there, that's when it's time for it to be on? I think that's exactly how it should work. I'm sorry, Sister Eve. I don't mean to ramble for a moment there, but that when it comes time to talk about war, that's the kind of thing that makes me look and say, yes, absolutely, we definitely need to.
Absolutely. I will let you talk as long as you'd like to talk. I know we don't have long with you tonight, but man, what an opening. And to the room, thank you all for joining us for this intimate conversation about war and power, specifically laws of power. I know that that's what I titled the room. And I know most times when people hear those words, they start thinking about Robert Greene's book. And while I'm not going to talk about it tonight, Professor, you had a whole other thought. You made this connection with the art of war. And then I started thinking about originals versus copies. But that was like my thought on what you said. And I was just, I guess it started snowballing into, well, wouldn't you want to be strong first? And then isn't strength power and two sides of the same bird or whatever? I just wanted to know if you can win without it, like the power aspect, or is it something that's gained along the way?
You're not going to get anything done without power because that's what power is. Power is the ability to get things done. If you have somebody who has virtue, but this person has no power, then the only thing they have is empty sentiment. As Black people, we've been taught to fear the word power. Power has been associated with negativity. Power is simply energy. You would never look and say that the electricity that powers your home is an evil thing. But on the other hand, if somebody's got like a power saw and they're coming at you with it, well, then at that point, maybe electricity is a bad thing in their hands. But electricity is perfect if it's in yours. The problem is not that power exists. The problem is not so much that power is abused, it's that the power is not in the hands of the right people. Because you put power in the hands of the right people, it won't be abused. But first, the good guys are going to have to make up their minds that they are going to get comfortable exercising power. And that we're also going to have to get comfortable with the responsibilities and the obligations that power requires. Why is it that we have so many Black people who are content to be employee of the month instead of businessman of the year? It's because too many of us are looking to be the bare minimum people. We're looking to do the very least that we could do. I'll tell you right now, for a long, long while, that's how I kind of felt about what I was doing. I was always asking myself, could I be doing more? I feel absolutely more energized and I feel much more productive with the current format that I've undertaken that I've felt in years. I've been doing this for a decade and a half at least. But now
That's
that I've switched to doing it this 6 days a week, I feel as if I'm actually doing something now because I'm touching on so many subjects that ordinarily I wouldn't have been able to. That's part of how power works. Power is going to require things from you. It's going to require you to get off the couch. It's going to require you to burn the midnight oil. It's going to require you to be running around meeting people and talking to people, especially if you're not the most social of individuals. But in the end, what power is going to do is it's going to give you the ability to make sure that the Ron DeSantis's and the Elon Musk and the rest of the assorted trash, that these people are not going to be able to threaten your existence. And if power gives you the ability to secure your future and that of your children, well, if power requires you to put aside the fun and to give up your free time, then don't you have to make that sacrifice? Don't you have to? Because the alternative is, well, you're not going to have to worry about not having free time. You also won't have your existence either. That's the alternative.
that is 100% facts. People talk to me about all that stuff all the time with regards to what you do in a day, and I think with you, you're a great example of what you're talking about. Two things that you talk about a lot is paying attention and being focused. And I think being laser beam focused is critical right now. But if you have the ability to shoot lasers, well, you might be dangerous. And even Kato from Mortal Kombat had a laser. And I mean, I don't know if you know Kato. He's low rung, low energy, pussy minded. Like he wasn't even supposed to have the dragon professor, but he stole it. And he's some of people's favorite characters sometimes. But well, again, I don't know if you know Cato, but if you do, you saw how he ended up.
Well, I'm not exactly up on my. You say what was he from again?
It was from Mortal
Okay,
Kombat.
I
I
think I
just
missed
watched it
those.
the other
I
day.
missed those movies, but I didn't I didn't exactly watch those movies, but I get the basic idea. As far as power goes, and as far as being dangerous goes, well, we got to watch out because I know these little white supremacist censors are listening. They're always monitoring. When it comes to being dangerous, I think the biggest problem that black people have is that we have bent over backwards and twisted ourselves into knots. We have just pretzeled ourselves into near extinction because we're trying to prove to everybody that we are the safest people in the room, that we are the most non threatening people in the room. That's part of the reason why, whenever it comes to black people, we just can't wait to start performing. Whenever it comes time to talk about politics with black people, we just cannot wait to start the comedy routine. And why? Because we feel that that disarms people when they're around us. Hopefully, they'll lower their guard. To hell with that. The entire reason that Kamala Harris felt like she could sit there and tell black people, you think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No! The only reason that Joe Biden knew that he could lie through his teeth and tell black people, oh, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that, these policies, there's going to be a lift every voice plan, whatever the hell that means. There's going to be a George Floyd Police Accountability Commission. There's going to be a John Lewis, this, that, and the third. The only reason he felt like he could lie through his teeth to black people was because, as far as he was concerned, black people cannot exact consequences for lying to us. That's the reason everybody feels that about us, because we have encouraged that. We've shown everybody that we just want to be we want to be their pals, their buddies. We keep talking about allies, allies. I mean, that word has been worn out. The problem is you can't have allies unless you have a partner who wants to be your ally. There's no such thing as allyship being a one-way street. It's got to be reciprocal. So no, as far as black people goes, we need to stop trying to show people how unthreatening we are. People are not going to take you seriously unless they understand that there could be consequences for trying to tell people that there's benefits to putting you in chains. When somebody threatens your freedom, they're threatening your life. And if they feel like there's no consequence for doing so, then why shouldn't they throw you in chains or throw you in a shallow grave? No, we need to show people that as black people, we are indeed dangerous if we are threatened. When people understand that, then all of a sudden they're going to stop being so comfortable telling us what they're going to do to us. When we show people that black people are indeed to be taken seriously, because there could be serious consequences, that there's danger in threatening our safety, there's danger in deciding that you're going to impugn our integrity and that you're going to be telling people that black people somehow have some sort of special, that we have some sort of special privileges when you know full well we are 100 people in this land. If we show people that lying about us carries consequences, then what's going to happen is we're going to start getting things. That's the way that the actual real world works. The people who try to show themselves as being wilting violets and don't mind us, we're just over here in the corner, those people get ignored or they get told to leave the room or they get thrown out of the room. But the people who sit down at the table of power and start to deal, those are the ones who make it very clear. I'm here on business, and there is a serious or else behind everything that I say. Those are the people who actually get things done. When black conversation and the black focus turns to that, and we get comfortable with the idea that people are not going to like us in power, then we'll see things change. I cannot tell you how many discourses that I've had. That's part of the reason why I'm not real big on doing live streams and such, because we get a lot of questions from people who are looking for an excuse not to do the hard work that power requires. But part of the discourses that I've had with people by personal messages, direct messages, and emails, a large part of it comes to people who are just scared. I always hear the exact same thing. Professor Truth, are you saying that all white folks or all non-black folks is bad? Did I ever say that all white people are bad or that all non-black people are bad? No, that's a stupid question. Why would somebody ask me that? Because what they're really trying to say is, I've got somebody or I've got a girlfriend here or a boyfriend or a spouse or some close buddy of mine, and well, they would be probably feel some kind of way if black people got reparations. They would feel some kind of way if black people started getting their fair share of the world. They might feel that's unfair. Anyone who feels that you having power to ensure your future and that of your progeny, anyone who feels that that is unfair or undesirable, looking at the condition that black people are in, the condition we have been forced to live under, what kind of friend is that? If you have somebody who you're in bed with and this person feels that you being subjugated is somehow the way the world should be, and that you making it clear, not only am I going to get out from under this subjugation, I'm going to ensure that nobody can ever subjugate me again. If that person feels as if somehow that's unfair, what they're saying is they don't like justice, because that's what you're demanding. You are demanding justice. Justice means balance. How the hell is it that everybody else, including groups who only showed up 5 minutes ago, they got the government bending over backwards to ensure their future and doing everything that they can to eliminate ours? And we're supposed to sit here and play nice about it? To hell with that. As black people, we better get comfortable with the fact that everybody else is going to get very angry about us getting ours. They always do. That's part of the reason why I keep showing you the statistics, showing you those polls, the Gallup polls, the Reuters polls, Ipsos polls. What was going on in the 1960s and the 1950s when black people had the civil rights movement going? Was white America, were the non-black communities in this country, were they happy about that and said, oh, as long as you guys aren't doing like Malcolm X, we're cool? No, they hated it. You have had a consistent 70+% of the population who oppose anything that black people are in favor of. The Freedom Riders, you had 70% of the country, when polled, who said that they did not approve of the Freedom Riders. And the Freedom Riders were saying, stop lynching black people, stop killing black people. And 70% of the country said, we don't like that. We like killing black people. We enjoy killing black people. You shouldn't oppose that. Stop objecting to your own deaths. Dr. King proposed the March on Washington. 70% of the country said, no, we don't like the idea of a March on Washington. So, and if you look today, everything from Black Lives Matters, yes, I know people talk about the group, but you know what I mean. What Black Lives Matters claimed to stand for, at least what the people in the streets were claiming that Black Lives Matters was about. You had 70+% of the country who didn't like that either. So you need to understand there's a lot of people who have grown fat and rich and comfortable off of black people being subjugated. The racial pyramid is not seen as a bad thing by 70% of the country minimum. And certainly more than that, they look at the racial pyramid as being the best of all possible worlds. Because by guaranteeing us at the bottom, that guarantees that nobody else has to be there. And you see, that's the unspoken agreement that all of these non-black groups understand, that the racial pyramid is conferred on them. Even if you're not necessarily at the top, it guarantees that the glass ceiling over black people's heads, that's going to be the glass floor that insulates everybody else from the bottom. So you can have all these racists, the Dinesh D'Souza's, the Ed Blums, and others. These clowns would be cleaning the grease trap at the local hole-in-the-wall restaurant if it wasn't for the racial pyramid. You think that they're going to let you come along and just tear all that down without them giving a peep? No. You have to get comfortable with the fact that people are going to be angry with you. This is why I keep telling people, if you want to be liked by everybody, which is what black people are obsessed with, if you want to be liked by everybody, then just keep saying yes. Oh, do you guys, do you like being at the bottom? Yes. Are you guys going to go along with whatever it is that we do to you? Yes. If you want to be a doormat, everybody will like you, or at least they'll pretend to. But if you want to be respected, then you better start learning to say no. And if people sit here and say that they don't like you doing what you got to do to ensure your future, you better get comfortable with learning to say, so what? Power does not raise its hand to take an opinion poll and is it okay for me to be in charge and is it okay for me to make sure that my future is secure? Power doesn't do that. Power simply moves. And when people complain about it, power does not pay them any attention unless they're trying to threaten you, in which case power simply moves to stop the threat. You see, the bad guys, they've been using power to ensure that we stay at the bottom. I want you to get comfortable with the fact that you need power so that you can retake your proper position in the world. Because if there's any system that's set up, any set of laws that says that I must remain a permanent underclass and that I must remain oppressed, in that case, then go ahead and call me outlaw number one. I will never obey a single law like that, and I won't encourage you to do so either. And if there's anyone who comes among us and tells us that we need to go along with that, like the Jacoby Pittmans and others, man, they're going to be shown the door. And if they refuse to leave by the door, then they will be thrown out the door. And when you start doing that, when you start making it where people can't come among us and just talk all crazy, then what's going to happen is they're going to start withdrawing and they're going to start trying to figure out what the world do they do. Once they've withdrawn, it's time for you to start taking territory on their side of the line. At some point, that's what we're going to have to do. When it comes to media, when it comes to politics, when it comes to commerce, we are going to have to start retaking the commons. We're going to have to start retaking our piece of the world. All this stuff has been stolen from us. We got to make up our minds that we are determined. It is imperative we're getting all of it back with appreciable interest. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And that's why I'm so glad to be part of this. When I think of the young people that we've got, whether it's the Tarian Reigns, whether it's like yourself, Eve, and others, it heartens me. It is very encouraging. I used to watch a lot of the video essays by one of our Grandmaster teachers, Dr. William Mackey, and he gave one lecture, I believe it was in the late 90s, and his health was not exactly the greatest at that time. But he said that basically the baby boomers, no surprise, he was part of the World War II generation, by the way, but he said the baby boomers basically had let everybody down. The baby boomers, they thought that some of this stuff was entertaining, but they did not realize that just because you can sit at a counter that's owned by a racist white businessman and you can give him your money without him calling the cops on you or throwing egg salad in your face, they thought that was a win because of the fact that they were able to snuggle up with people who were non-black and the lynch mobs didn't show up, at least not at your door, though they did show up in the form of the police and at the courthouse, they did do that. They thought that was a win. And Dr. William Mackey simply said, because of the fact that the baby boomers had dropped the ball and that they refused to continue the work, he said it will be 20 years before this movement restarts again. Now, he said that back in the late 90s. Fast forward 20 years, and we're talking about the mid-aughts, like 2016 or so. What does that tell you? He was right. I mean, there's a reason why Dr. John Henrik Clarke and others said that revolutions and revolts on average take between 10 and 20 years to gain steam because it takes a generation who is willing to follow through on it. That takes time until you have a large number of people who have made up their minds to do the work. And that's part of what I hope that I'm part of. And when I see these young folks who are continuing the message, that's good. We're going to need young blood to keep this going. We don't need people who are looking at this as politically oriented entertainment. You want to know why it is that I don't do many interviews? This is the second live stream that I've ever done in over a decade and a half. I did a lot of them. I would do weekly broadcasts with our brother Jason Black. But as far as anybody outside of that, I think I did one with Tariq once. But outside of that, nobody else. You want to know why? I couldn't help but notice that when we touch on subjects and topics, you had people in the comments who were trying to turn it into something else. Or you had people who were asking questions that clearly, they must be listening to the Kundalini energy, those Kundalini con men. And that, to me, that was a problem. I didn't want to contribute to that kind of discourse. I need my people to stay razor focused. And what I found was that actually, if I stayed where I was and just kept putting out the message, then people would actually glom onto it, starve the distractions for oxygen, don't pay them any mind, starve them for the attention that they want, and the people will find the truth and gravitate to it.
Professor, man, I know we don't have you all night tonight. I had so many things that I wanted to talk to you about, but I think I want to finish up my thoughts, at least tonight, with just one thought, um, or at least hear me out. You can't win an immoral war with your morality. That's something that it's like a core belief of mine. Because when they go low, and I know y'all have seen this happen, when they go low, and Michelle's always like, when they go low, we go high. But that's how you get uppercutted or kicked in the goods. And I think that when they go low, you have to go even lower. Like, shout out to Jesus for going to hell and telling the devil, fuck you. Like, I think that's the time we need to be on. My dude says that being immoral on code can take the whole morale away. So I wonder, at least I was wondering before our conversation tonight, knowing that we're the most moral people on the planet, like, how do you reverse it? Like, do we do it and then ask for forgiveness later? Like, do we wait for permission? Which was the move, but then you just said what you said, and I know that we're gonna take it. You, my dude, the new black media, all y'all already tell us what to do, and I think a lot of us don't like the easy answer to a hard question.
Of course,
So
one
I
of the
really
things,
appreciate your time
I
tonight.
forget who it was, but there was like somebody who said that when people ask for advice, it's usually because they already know the answer, but wish that they didn't. And for a lot of black folks, that's precisely what's going on. They already know what the answer is. They know what power requires. They know what it's going to take to crush white supremacy. But what they also know is that for a lot of them, they get to basically have their creature comforts. They get to watch TV. They get to goof off with friends. And to them, a lot of black folks, hopefully not too many here, but a lot of black folks want to remain children for the rest of their existence. And when it comes time to talk about white supremacy, they're like, well, can we stay like Dr. King? Well, come on. You know why you invoke Dr. King. You invoke Dr. King because his I Have a Dream speech is the one thing that a number of people in the white media and white society pretended that they could actually appreciate, but they didn't. That's the reason why whenever we have our Holy Week holiday seasons, I make sure to remind people of what the real Dr. King stood for, talking about reparations. When he was saying that white people in America didn't actually disagree with black people being oppressed, they just felt some kind of way about the Bull Connors and others turning fire hoses on children. That's what they had a problem with. But the subjugation of black people, they were fine with. This is the real Dr. King. And it's also one that most black folks who pretend as if they go along with the kumbaya, they will never remind people of what the real Dr. King stood for. Because what they really want is they want approval. And those people, they're not going to take us anywhere. And you know what? We have to get serious about booting them out. Right now, you have to look toward the future. And looking at the future, people are looking at Sheila Jackson Lee. I can't believe I said her whole name. Just Sheila Lee. And the reason why I only call her Sheila Lee is when you give somebody's entire name, when you talk about them, that's seen as a way to honor them. Like whenever people say Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you're saying his name complete with all of the honorifics and suffixes that go along with it. It's a way to honor him. With Sheila Jackson Lee, man, I'm not saying nothing. She's just that empty handkerchief head from Texas. But she's not alone. The Democrats are already trying to get some steam behind another woman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. And this woman here, I swear, she's using the Kamala Harris playbook, and she's going to reap the exact same results. This is what's happening, folks. The enemy is trying to keep a constant conveyor belt of these bootlicks coming at us. Now, the answer to that is not to hope that the enemy stops sending the bootlicks. The answer is for us to get serious about calling these people out and making it where we create an environment where they can't operate. If you don't believe that that can happen, I can tell you right now, just go ahead and take a look at Sheila Lee and her would-be mayorship of Houston. She crashed and burned. It wasn't even close. If black Houstonians had turned out, then Sheila Lee would be already making out her speech and choosing what kind of drapes she wants to put up in the Houston mayor's office. As it is, she got blown out. And that's because black folks made a smart decision, which was, since our empowerment is not on the ballot, we're not going to the polls. All right.
That's
I'm
very
sorry, I had
true.
one more
That's
thing I
like,
want to add. I need to clear my throat for a moment. Now, as far as power goes, black people could not abuse power, especially black Americans. We couldn't abuse power even if we wanted to. We don't have the mentality to actually abuse power. Not the way that these white supremacists have. Does that mean that we would be perfect with it? Probably not perfect, but we would be a damn sight better than what we got right now. Black people need to stop being scared of wielding power. Stop being afraid of making the sacrifices that power demands. Power is a good thing in the hands of good people. But that's part of what happens when a people have been stripped of their power, when they've been stripped of their identity, they've been stripped of the ability to determine their own future. What happens is they become dysfunctional. These are people who stop thinking and acting for themselves. And when people stop thinking and acting for themselves, they become directionless. It's like trying to herd cats. This is what's happened with black people. We have become largely dysfunctional because we do not have power. Without power, you're not going to be able to properly direct and guide a group. Why is it that you got other communities who are more coherent or at least more focused than ours? It's because they have the power to actually incentivize people in their group to do things, and they have the power to punish those who do not. Power changes everything. The white supremacists understand that. That's why they've been fighting a half a millennium jihad against us to make sure that we remain the most powerless people in the society. You change the condition of black people in this country, and that will change everything. I mean, if you really want to be serious about waging war on the enemy, you better focus on getting your hands on some power. It's okay. If people, you always got black people looking for an excuse to not have to do the work. Like, well, what if you can't find anyone around you to build with? I'll tell you this story right now. Years ago, when TBA made his first documentary, 7 a.m., I was listening in on the live stream, and I believe that it was, I want to say that it was in New York or Britain. It was one place where they were doing a screening. And you had an audience full of black folks there who had just gotten through watching the documentary. And TBA took some Q&A questions. You had a woman who actually stood up and said, but what if you can't find anyone around you to build with? She was sitting in a room full of other black people who just got through watching the same documentary she did, black people who I think it's safe to say are on code. And yet, right then and there, in that very moment, she said, but what if you can't find anyone to build with? And she's in a room surrounded by people she could build with. That's how desperate a lot of black people have become to try to find a way to make excuses for what they don't want to do. Dr. Claude Anderson pointed out when you got folks from other communities, they don't sit there looking for excuses. If they do not have a community, then first order of business is establish one. You know, when you got black people who are actually on code, that tends to create its own center of gravity. It draws things into it. Right now, we got about 345 or so people who are listening to this right now. I'll tell you right now, that would not have been well, actually, let me be a little bit more blunt than that. When I first started doing this over 15 years ago, this would have been basically an entire video for a week's viewership. And this is just off the cuff for something I don't even normally do. That is the power of somebody who decides, I'm not going to make an excuse of, I can't find anyone else. Maybe you don't need anyone else to get started. Did that ever occur to you? If you had black people who made up their minds, I'm going to build right where I am. And I know that if I build, I will at least have a foundation that makes it where I can invite and bring other people to what it is that I've built. And once you've done that, you can start spilling out some rules. You want to know how you build a foundation? That's how you do it. You start with yourself. You make sure that you get yourself straightened out first, get your own situation straight. And once you have established that foundation, now you're in a position where you can start saying, here's what the code of conduct is going to be for the other people who are going to be gravitating what I've got. Because let's be bluntly honest. A lot of black people are able to actually build something. The ones who actually do the work, they're able to do it mainly because very few black people are trying. This whole guff about what if I build and other people want, what you're actually saying is you're expecting a whole group of people to show up and everybody's going to say, oh, we're going to have this wonderful group community commune thing. That ain't reality. That is not reality. When Malcolm walked the earth, he didn't have tons of black people who were streaming towards him and saying, oh, let us follow this man. In fact, it was the opposite. I could show you interview after interview where every time Malcolm was talking, you had black folks saying, there's no racism going on. Racism is not a problem. This is the 1950s and 60s. Emmett Till was being killed when they were saying this. They were hanging black folks like goddamn Christmas ornaments. And you had black people while Malcolm was sitting here watching fools on interviews saying racism ain't that bad. In fact, it's not a problem at all. That's the problem with black people who are waiting for a crowd of people to tackle them and say, ooh, you look like you're interested in black empowerment. Stop waiting for other people. That's an excuse. If you really want black empowerment, start building where you stand. That's reality. And what will happen is other people are going to see you building. Now, there's going to be a few fools, of course, who don't need to be there, and that's fine. Power is not inclusive, it's exclusive. There are going to be some people who have a problem with the fact that you're laying down the law and saying, here's what the code of conduct must be. But that's fine. Power is exclusive, not inclusive. If you're building something that actually is worthwhile, people are going to understand that it needs to be protected. They're going to understand that this is important, it's precious, and that being the case, you just can't go about it any old kind of way. So let this be my little mini lecture about the people who are constantly complaining and saying, what if I can't find anyone to build with? When I hear that from somebody, that tells me you're not worth building with. If it comes time to build, you start where you are. It will start with you. And if you are serious about it, if you mean what you're doing, then what will happen is other people will notice it. They're going to say, hey, here's this woman over here. She seems to have her act together. Look what she's doing. They're going to notice it. Most people ain't building a doggone thing. So why shouldn't you be the one who shows them how it's done? That's what's missing. See, with every other group, when people start building things, the first thing they make clear is, oh, we're not just letting any old people up in here. We need people who are here to help build this enterprise and help it continue. And that's how you build an institution. Institutions, as I've defined it, institutions are the guardians of ideas and ideals. An institution is not these buildings with the ionic columns out front. Those are simply structures. Those are simply headquarters. The actual institution itself are the people. That's the institution. But an institution cannot just be any old kind of thing. It must have rules. That's part of the reason why every time you have institutions, they usually have some sort of charter. They have a charter spelling out specifically what the rules are, what it is that they stand for, their mission statement. They say this is who we are and this is what we are trying to accomplish. And when other people show up and say, well, why don't we do this, that, there's okay, you can go ahead and hit the door. We don't need you here because they're trying to dilute the mission. If you're serious about what you're doing, you have no problem telling somebody else, hey, I may not have 1,000 people around me looking to help me do this, but the people that I do have, they got to be rock ribbed. They got to be steel spined about it. You will get a hell of a lot more done with 100 people who are about their purpose and on their mission, as opposed to having 1,000 people and you got at least 990 of them ain't worth a lick. You want to know why it is that people are talking about reparations? It's not because millions of black people were about it. It's because the precious few, the special forces of black empowerment, the folks like the ones you got in this room right now, that's because we have been talking about it and we're not stopping talking about it. You had idiots sitting there saying, shouldn't we be voting for Sheila Lee? She had a reparations committee. Any black person who sits there on their hands and allows that travesty, that insult that took place a couple of years ago with Ta-Nehisi Chokes and the rest of these clowns, everybody saying, scholarships could be reparations. So on the one hand, you got idiots like Coleman Cruz saying there shouldn't be any reparations. And on the other hand, you got idiots saying, well, we should have reparations if they can go to white institutions, to white banks, white mortgage companies, white universities. That's six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. That's how white power always makes sure to slant the playing field in their favor. They control both sides of the conversation. And Sheila Lee didn't have a word to say about that. She should have been the first one saying cash reparations, $60 trillion, no excuses. Have you ever heard Sheila Lee talk like that? No, she hasn't. And she's not going to. Why? Because she's a social climber, just like Kamala Harris, just like Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD, who moonlights as the city's mayor. Sylvester Turner, there's another one that I want to make sure nobody ever forgets, because I made it a mission that I would define Sylvester Turner to the black grassroots. I wanted to make sure that every time I talked about Mike Bloomberg and his failed presidential run, I would always mention, oh, and by the way, you remember that Sylvester Turner, mayor of the nation's fourth largest city, he was down there saying, oh, we ain't mad about stop and frisk. Why, stop and frisk, he gave an apology and all is forgiven. Says who? That's what Sylvester Turner did. You have a lot of Negroes who white power elevates specifically for the purpose of selling out you and me. That's why it was so beautiful what happened at Brown Chapel AME Church. They turned their backs on Bloomberg. They had their pastor who defiled the house of God by bringing the devil up in there. And what happened was the people performed an impromptu exorcism, and they ran the devil out of the house of God. But my question is, what happens to Sylvester Turner now? What happens to any of his children who he wants to have in politics? Do they get to go on and seek higher office, or they decide that they're going to get themselves some sort of consulting gig and they get to ride off in the sunset? They sell us out and they use us as a springboard to ensuring their own prosperity? Or do we make it very clear? Your political career is done. Your name is now anathema. Your name is a curse. We can make you a pariah. You will not get anything. And every time somebody mentions your name, we're going to be honored and say, Sylvester Turner, that's Sylvester Turncoat. If that's the kind of mindset that we take up, and there are some black folks who are serious about it, if we get more and more black people used to that kind of thinking, then there's going to be a lot less of the Sheila Lees and the Sylvester Turners. They would not dare even return Mike Bloomberg's phone call, much less stand on a podium with them and say, yeah, we ain't mad about stop and frisk. You just did what you has to do's. There would be a lot less of no Jacoby Pittmans. She would not dare. If black folks had started right then and there, had started shouting her down, if they had started cussing her out right then and there, she would have left. But unfortunately, too many of us, we've put handcuffs on ourselves. We do not seem to know the difference between when you have black people who are acting intelligently as opposed to black people who are trying to engage in respectability politics. When you have a number of black people who get gunned down by a white racist murderer inspired by Ron DeSantis, when Ron DeSantis shows up, he's supposed to get the business. He's not supposed to be having black folks with their heads down going, man, it sure is wrong that he showed up here. No. And anyone who stands with them, they're supposed to get run out of town on a rail right along with them. That's what's supposed to happen. And for people who are serious about their power, starting with the power to have to live your life safely, that's what they would do.
Power changes everything. That just blew the room up. I don't know if you saw all the reactions, but I did. It's only our lives, right? Um, I feel so spoiled since we've had you for so long tonight. I don't know if you want to take any calls or not because of what you just said and how people like to ask questions that they already know the answer to. But there are a few people who have questions if you wanted to stick around for that.
I'm sure I do. I don't mind taking a couple of questions. I just hope that it's not about pop culture or what rapper is beefing with whom, or as long as it's nothing like that, I think we should be okay.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, to the room. If you're familiar with me, you already know how I like to run my question spaces. Don't hog the mic. Don't be a troll and don't be a coon. I mean, if you're going to be a coon, you will be treated accordingly.
Oh
Professor,
no, I actually have the
one
opposite
person.
of viewpoint on that. I'll tell you right now, trolls, all the little white supremacist idiots with their little pre-canned talking points, by all means, go ahead and call in. By all means, you guys should get put at the front of the line. Those I much prefer to go ahead and be able to check these trolls and these punks properly. So if there are trolls, by all means, feel free to call in. I can guarantee you won't forget it.
That is rich. And I just, every day, you just do something that makes me, want to tell people, hey, have y'all checked out his channel? I posted it in the jumbo. You should be subscribed. And not because he's so funny. It's just because he's real. New Black Media is news you can use in real time. And I mean that. So, all jokes aside, Black American Homeland, peace to you. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Just Eve and Professor Black Truth. Yeah, my name is Frederick Delk. I have a book out. I read the book, published a book titled Black American Homeland, Supermajority Black Regional States, The Great Reverse Migration. I advocate for Black Americans to consolidate 80% of their population into the 8 states southern region for supermajority population and political
Okay,
control
sir,
of
sir,
those
sir.
states.
I'm
Yes,
not trying to be, I promise you, I'm not trying to be mean,
yes,
but there's a billion people with their hands up right now. Can you maybe
yes,
get very to the point? Thank
yes,
you.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, yeah. I advocate for Black Americans to reverse migrate into the 8 state southern region for political control and supermajority of those
All
states,
right.
right?
Black
And I would
American
like
Homeland,
to,
I appreciate you coming through the space. Twizzle, can you please speak to Professor Black Truth like you got some sense? And to the other callers, I'm not going to sit up here and do that with y'all tonight. I've never done that with y'all tonight. Y'all not going to start doing that tonight. Twiz, are you able to unmute your mic?
Yes, indeed. I'm right here.
Thank you.
Professor Black Truth, it's a privilege and an honor. I just want to say I listen to you every morning, but I'm in and I'm out. I just got two questions. I'm from California, and I listen to your broadcast and how you always everybody say California is falling. I'm seeing California is falling to the Asians, and when Jean Pete came out here, to me, he just basically just stepped on his new territory of California. And the last one, did you see the platinum plan that Trump got? And what do you think about it? I land my plane there.
As far as Trump's platinum plan goes, and thank you for calling in. As far as Trump's platinum plan goes, if you look back on the archives on my YouTube channel, I already talked about that. Basically, it's exactly like Joe Biden's Lift Every Voice plan. The similarities far outweigh the differences. Basically, Trump said that it was going to have something to do with black people, and then next thing you know, it was people of color and it was minorities and all the rest of it. So, if Trump actually wanted to do something regarding black people as a group, he would have done it. Now, sure, there are amazingly, there were a couple of things that Trump did as far as giving people pardons and such. But just keep in mind, these were things that did not. These were things that were good for people at the individual level. But what really needs to happen is there needs to be apparatuses put in place where black people in particular, whenever black people are convicted, there needs to be a special process that makes it where black people undergo immediate review of those convictions. Because we just had a brother up in, I believe it was Minnesota. This guy was in prison for like 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. Every time you look up, we're hearing every week about black folks whose entire lives have been wiped out. 10 years in prison, 15, 20, 30, 40. I remember this one tragic case, a horrifying case that took place. I believe it was down in, I want to say Mississippi or Alabama, so one of those backward little states down south. You had this black man who had been in prison for 45 years. And when he finally got his conviction overturned, the man had cancer and he died soon thereafter. This man's entire life was spent in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And the white racist prosecutor sitting here, the man's telling him, you destroyed my entire life. You killed me before I was even dead. And the prosecutor's like, oh, I'm just right. I'm just, man, forget about all that. There need to be real consequences for these railroadings, and there needs to be a special process in place specifically for black defendants. We know that black people are disproportionately convicted for crimes they didn't commit. There needs to be something in line for that. Nobody's talking about that. Biden's not talking about that. Trump's not talking about that. Look, as far as Donald Trump goes, let's not go too far with the comparisons between him and Biden. I know there's a lot of people who will point out that Trump basically, to put it in a phrase, that Donald Trump is actually no worse than Joe Biden. I've said the same thing, but we don't want to make it into, but he's better than Biden. No, he's not. We should not be any more scared of Donald Trump than we are of Joe Biden. One of them slaps us in the face and says darkies, and the other one slaps us in the face and says, I love niggers. That's the only difference between the two. That's a distinction without a difference. So Donald Trump, as far as his plans for Black America goes, that's very interesting. Or do you think there are any? If I thought that Donald Trump was actually serious about some of the things that he said, instead of it just being the same old professional BS artist from Queens, the same old huckster selling some soap, some snake oil, and he's just going to say whatever the person standing in front of him wants to hear. If I thought that he was serious about some of those things, I might, very small might, be inclined to say, well, if the man starts talking right about reparations, I might be willing to overlook some of the more stupid things that he says. Because here's the thing, when it comes to any politician at all, you're not going to get everything you want. The question is, can you get what you need? And Donald Trump's not giving us what we need. He's just not. If he decides to change his tune on that, if he decides to clean up some of those associations, keep the Stephen Millers out and the rest of the crazies, if he actually came to Black America and said, I want to be president again, and I know you guys aren't going to vote for me, but I'll tell you what, reparations is on the table. Reparations on the table. I'm going to make a State of the Union address. In fact, I'm going to go on the campaign trail and say reparations. If he started talking like that, you know what? That might be somebody who I could actually listen to and say, hey, he's actually saying something concrete for us. But he's not doing that. So let's not go too far with the being open-minded about Trump, as many people might think of themselves as being. Let's not go too far with that.
Thank you for that, Professor. I have a couple people on stage, and after you ask your question, I'm just drop you down because there's other people who'd like to come up. We don't know how long we have tonight, but Dr. Short, are you there?
Yes, Sister Eve. Can you hear me?
I can. Peace to you. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Sister. I'm going to go very quickly, but I do request a dispensation to simply say Professor Black Truth. Whenever anybody asks me, who do I listen to, I always say Professor Black Truth. It's the only person I listen to with any consistency. I appreciate you greatly. Question. Some of our Boule Divine Nine groups have participated in our oppression. For example, the people in the Omega Psi Phi fraternity are if not largely responsible for the Tuskegee experiment. I've been saying that we should demand reparations of our traitors like the Omega Psi Phi or the AKAs that helped sterilize Black women in Mississippi. What do you say, sir?
These things that took place against us, these were crimes against humanity. Everybody else may deny our humanity, but we do not deny our own. And when it comes to any sort of system of oppression, there's always an element of complicity. Anywhere that there's human suffering, there are human vultures. And unfortunately, we have been no different. You want to know why the vast majority of uprisings or revolts that took place inside the United States failed? The slave uprisings and revolts, practically all of them failed. Why? We have had a traitor class among us. And our fatal flaw was that when we left those plantations in 1865, we took the traitors with us. That's how you get the David Clarks and the Clarence Thomases running around. Do you know that Clarence Thomas can actually speak Gullah Geechee or whatever? I forget what the exact phrasing is, but he actually can speak that. I mean, before the Heritage Foundation and these other people like Harlan Crow got their hooks into him, Clarence Thomas was basically your typical faux black radical, phony black radical. That is until they offered him a job, which is what he really wanted. But as far as dealing with especially these fraternities and sororities and these boule bootlicks, you're absolutely right that there needs to be some measure of retribution that takes place as far as them being forced to divest. Any sort of internal elements that have worked against us, that have collaborated in our oppression, they are every bit as complicit as the US government. And just as the US government is an institution that still exists today, and its crimes from 300, 500 years ago are just as valid and just as worthy of punishment as they were then, same thing goes for these boulets who go along with it. If you got these clowns going ski wee, you're going to be going ski wee under whatever highway underpass you're living under. Yes, I agree with that. That these fraternities and sororities, these have been just a bunch of little sellout factories. Part of what we should make clear is they need to be forced to divest. They need to be forced to shut down. Anyone who has had institutions that have been taking part in harming us, undermining us internally or externally, yes, absolutely. I don't believe that they should be able to have any place among us. Let them go try to find a way to suck up to, to the Harlan Crows and to the Joseph Coors and these other professional influence peddlers. But you're absolutely right. I think that's a very good idea. We do not want to forget about them. And yeah, they should be punished. What I hope, though, is I hope we can get black folks to stop aspiring to be in these groups. Because part of the reason that we're not able to get rid of these pests is because of the fact you still got black folks who think that they're going to be able to get a free car or they're going to be able to get some social connections by being associated with them. We got to be honest about that part too.
That's real, Professor Black Truth. Dr. Short, I lost you in the space, but how to stop them? You call them what they are. I find that making people uncomfortable is very good
Turn their
medicine. They're
fraternity,
brother
turn those
fuckers.
Greek sorority ties and such into a liability. That's what the key is.
There
You
you
have to
go.
make it where it goes from being an asset to being a liability. Now, you have some idiots on the white right, like fools who don't know what the hell they're doing, like Christopher Rufo and such. I mean, there's who couldn't get over on that idiot? But he didn't understand why it is that the white right is not able to do what it is that those on the left have been able to do, which is they've been able to take people's strengths and turn them into weaknesses. You can't just sit there and talk bad about them. You got to make sure that people understand exactly why it is that this person is doing things that are harmful to them, and you have to make sure that they are reminded relentlessly in a way that makes sense. You got some idiot who just says woke all day, woke. I mean, Ron DeSantis, he spent the last 3 years basically saying a noun, a verb, and woke. And then he can't understand why his campaign's crashing and burning. He sounds like an idiot. He sounds like he has Tourette's syndrome. If you really want to be serious about pejoratizing something, which is what Rufo was hoping to do with woke, if you want to pejoratize something, people need to understand how it relates to them. And that's why every time you got one of these bootlicks we talk about, if they're part of a Greek sorority or frat, I immediately point that out, and I point out which one that they're a part of. We have to make it where these fraternities and these sororities and such, that they become anathema to the black community. Somebody says that they're part of that. Ooh, I can't be around you. That's where we start.
Excellent, excellent. To Dr. T, you've been up for a moment. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the stage. Are you there, Dr. T? Going once. Terry, are you there? Okay. Let's go to Jonathan Mark. Are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome to the
Thank
stage. Peace.
you. Peace, peace. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having the professor on here. It's a privilege and an honor for sure. My main thing, I wanted to continue what the professor was talking about when it came to, black people's uh, goading and hype from Trump now. I don't think we should be doing that. We already know the Democrats are bad and they're decadent and they like to, cheat time us and like to do what Malcolm said, play the fox role. But we have to understand that the Republicans are the overt wolves and they've never changed their stripes on that, no matter what Trump does. Remember, Trump started out as a Democrat. So I think right now, like the time is now. I feel like for us to start our own political party. We don't need to play this two-party game, and I feel like I want to see the professor's take on that. For Black people, stop, feeling like we have to, go for one ledge on one side or the other. I think it's time for us to, declare our independence and our nationhood and do that in the political realm and, make some headway ourselves and really start our own party and get our own candidates running on all levels. And I'm gonna land my plane on that.
Okay, this is something that comes up on a pretty consistent basis, talking about starting our own political parties and such. I'm not going to poo poo the idea because it's not a bad idea, but my question would be, do you look and see the Asians with their own political party? Do you see them with one? Do you see the Hispanics with their own political party? Do you see the Jewish community with their own political party? And yet they're able to leverage disproportionate heft, largely because the political parties have already made it clear they're going to be doing things for other people other than black folks. So I know we're going to have the people saying, "Hey, you can't compare them necessarily to us in political terms. The system is going to go ahead and do things for them and ignore us." That is true. But what's also true is that in every single case where black people have simply gotten on code, a political party becomes basically an afterthought. You can get things done as long as black folks are on code. So it doesn't matter if you say that it's a political party or not. I think the most important thing is that black people have to be absolutely adamant about what our interests are, and that we make it clear what our interests are, and that there are going to be consequences for defying those interests or refusing to accede to those interests. Now, if you want to say that there's a political party, that's fine. Just keep in mind that whenever you have a political party, you're also going to have individuals who are trying to define what the party stands for. We would be better off, I think, establishing what our ideology is going to be before we start trying to put a name and a label out there and saying, here's the tent that we're all going to get under.
Thank you for that, Professor. The Negro Black Knight's heritage. Let's go to you next.
All right. Thank you, E, for putting this room together. We needed to have this conversation as a family for a very long time. So salute to you on that. I want to get to the point. It's about intellectual property. In our community, there's been a lack of respect amongst ourselves when it comes to intellectual property, how it's used, and other people are desecrating institutions that other people are building. And then when people respond with lawsuits, they want to call foul. I think that the only way that we can come to power is punishing these coons who are out here desecrating these institutions, who are in the interest of our community, so we can start getting at the real fight of real threats that's really affecting our community. What do you say about that, Professor
Can you give
Blacktooth?
me some specifics? I feel as if you're hinting at something specific, but I'd like to hear what specifically you're referring to.
Yes, sir. What's been going on is I have people that would take my logos, desecrate it, and impersonate our organization with the intentions of destroying it. So when I threatened to get legal suits, people were crying, saying, I'm going to destroy the movement and this, that, and the third, boo-hooing. I'm looking at that. I'm strengthening the ranks, getting the weak ones out and putting the real warriors in. Am I wrong to do that?
Oh, no, if you got intellectual property, you might as well go ahead and defend it. It beats the alternative. I deal with people literally every single day who spoof my channel and they carpet bomb my comment sections, trying to trick people into going to these WhatsApp accounts, these little scam Telegram accounts. So, yeah, I definitely know what you mean about people misusing your logo and trying to spoof your name and such. So, if you're standing up for your intellectual property, that's fine. But as far as someone destroying the movement, let me tell you something. No movement has ever been destroyed from without. The Black Panthers were not destroyed from without. What happened was there were a whole bunch of infiltrators and turncoats and suck-ups who got in there. You know, years ago, TBA did an interview with some of the founders of the Black Panthers, and he asked them, if you had it to do all over again, what would you have done differently? And the man told him, if I had it to do all over again, we would have been a hell of a lot more circumspect about who we let in. I mean, they let in a whole raft. They were just infested with a whole bunch of FBI informants and turncoats and traitors and people just trying to undermine them. So, as far as somebody telling you that they're going to destroy the movement, they don't have the power to destroy the movement. They didn't make it, they don't have the power to destroy it. The only one who can do that is you. And if you're not going to destroy the movement, then you make sure to protect what you got to protect and keep on about the business.
Excellent, Professor. I just love this Q&A, and thank you to the room for not being crazy. To the people who have your hands up, it's a lot of y'all. I appreciate your patience. Let's go to Immortal Melanin.
Thank you. Greetings to you, Just Eve and Professor Black Truth. It's an honor and a privilege. Professor Black Truth, I've heard many of your essays concerning one Robert McCullough, who was formerly the prosecuting attorney for St. Louis County, the prosecuting attorney that oversaw the proceedings concerning Michael Brown Jr.'s murder. I just wanted to bring to your attention, you may know this already, but I just wanted to see if you had any comment about the fact that that man's son just committed a school shooting. He was a off-duty St. Louis County police officer. He went to a trunk or treat event at a local school and opened fire. And he's walking these streets today out on bond. And punishment for him really doesn't seem likely. So any comment you had about it, I'd appreciate it. And thank y'all for letting me speak.
Oh, I want to thank you very much for your comments, bro. The first thing people need to remember about Bob McCullough is Bob McCullough is a Democrat, or at least he was. I mean, he may not own it much anymore, but Bob McCullough was a Democrat. And that's the first thing to remember. In fact, a lot of these prosecutors who refused to prosecute these murderers who were killing black folks, these people were Democrats. As far as Bob McCullough and his son, I'm pretty sure I thought that I had probably reposted or retweeted somebody's tweet about it, because I forget when it happened. It happened like during, what was it, the summer or something like that. It's his when this first broke. But as far as Bob McCullough's kid going on a shooting spree, that doesn't surprise any of us. This is what always happens. You got a bunch of reprobates, and these people are immune from the law. And of course, as soon as they're allowed to get their hands on a gun, they start shooting folk. I did a video essay just today talking about Ethan Crumbly. His family gave him a gun for Christmas, for a Christmas gift, and he immediately runs off to school. So of course, Bob McCullough, the stupid does not fall far from the tree. This man was a reprobate, and it's obvious that his clearly defective genes have infested the pool, and we'll probably be dealing with this for a couple of generations. But I am disgusted by what he has done. I'm disgusted by what his son has done, but I'm not surprised. And this is the reason why there have to be consequences for people who do like Bob McCullough did. Does anyone truly believe that if Bob McCullough had not found himself stripped of his law license, if he had not been disbarred for what he did, if Bob McCullough had not found himself the subject of a prosecution, you believe that his son would be acting out? Of course not. This is what happens when people feel invincible, when they feel as if they can break the law with impunity. Their kids feel the same thing, the same way. Well, Daddy did it, so why can't I do it too? So yeah, that's Bob McCullough for you.
I think about the worst of us up against the worst of them. And I just read this story about Shanda Ark out of Michigan who murdered her son. And it's like, when you think about who we're up against, I think that we have a chance because we're thinking about the future. These people don't even care about their future. But can we be focused long enough to get to where we need to get to? I think we can. I think that these conversations prove that we can be focused for a moment. There's a couple of speakers who have their hand up, and then Professor, there's a bunch of speakers in the queue. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. So, Professor, whenever you're ready to do what you got to do,
Well, I'm
you
sure
can
we
do
can do
that.
it.
We'll
Like,
be so sad, but
I think we can do one or two more calls. That should be fine. By the way, while we're speaking of dirty prosecutors, at the very least, people do. I think everybody should be aware, of course, that the crooked prosecutor who tried to keep the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery from going to prison, she's failed to basically keep herself from having to go to trial. So Jackie Johnson, she's supposed to be going to trial, and that at least is That's at least going to be something. But there needs to be more like that. Because you're not going to be seeing Jackie Lacey's kids or daughters, whatever. You're going to have a hard time seeing them acting out because they know they're under a microscope. Punishment works. That's the lesson to be learned here. Punishment works. It works for the police, it works for these crooked prosecutors, and eventually we're going to start getting around to making sure that the judges get the treatment too. But let's go on to the next question.
All right, the atavist, it is on you.
Thank you so much, E, for the room, and it's definitely an honor and privilege to listen to Professor Black Truth. I'll be very quick. As we delineate in every facet, politically, with the no tangibles, no vote, I know it's kind of hard to see, but sir, if you could read the tea leaves and I could say, okay, we achieve our mission. We achieve our mission in a sense, or the Democratic Party is hurt and they want to listen to us. Is there any particular strategies or things that we should do maybe a year from now? We should, once we know that our strategy has worked to some degree.
Okay, can you restate the question? Is there something we should do a year from now if what we're doing with the Democrats doesn't work?
Well, no. Okay, I'm probably nervous. Okay, it does seem like we are moving towards political delineation with the no tangibles, no vote. And I realize that it's a year away. Are there any particular things other than what we're doing now that we can do to become a little bit more political, collectively savvy and prepare for whatever the results of the next election will be?
Okay, as far as that goes, let's make sure that everybody's on the same page about this. What we're doing is not success is not a destination, it's a journey. This is not about Black folks that at some point there's going to be the finish line. Oh, finally, Black empowerment is done. We can lay down arms, we're through. No. What we are trying to do is to build ourselves up so that as we continue to do the work, I'm trying to stay away from words like struggle or fight because I know that's off-putting to some people, but let's be honest here. Even if I could wave a magic wand and reparations became real today, and we could have all these crooked cops and prosecutors and such, we could have them locked up. That's not going to be the end of those people who are still trying to find ways to do us under. The goal is not to lay down arms and walk off to the sunset. The goal is to make sure that we have the resources and the institutions necessary to ensure that our people stay on this earth. It is to make sure that we are equipped and ready to compete. That's not going away, by the way. Even if white supremacy crumbled tomorrow morning, you would still have to find a way to earn your daily bread. You would still have to be able to do that. That's what we're actually trying to do to ensure our future, but through those means. Now, as far as voting for what's going to happen if we leave from the Democrats, part of what complicates this issue for us happens to be a lack of resources. Typically, what happens with groups and movements is they have local chapters. I wish I hadn't said the word chapters. What they have are local organizations who are ideologically aligned with them. You see this all the time from other groups, whether it be for religious institutions, whether it be for political institutions, social institutions and such. You'll have these people at the local level, many of whom might have had some passing contact with people where these movements started. But what happens is these people go back to their hometowns and they start to build where they are. You see, the entire reason that the enemy on all fronts happens to have institutions that are so widespread is because they built locally. This is something that Black people are going to have to start getting comfortable with. Black folks are going to have to start getting comfortable with building where they are. Of course, we also have to get comfortable with communicating with people in other cities and other places as well. Networking happens to be a fine art that Black people used to know very well. How do you think the so-called Green Book came to be? You think that stuff just fell out of the sky? No. Black people talked to each other. They started to have their businesses locally. And then what happened was they had contact with each other and said, hey, we need to make sure we got some sort of catalog, some sort of document so people can find us. We are going to have to start recreating and reestablishing that particular tradition. And that includes at the political level. You already know what the ideas and the tenets and the ideology of Black First happens to be. You know exactly what it is. Start where you are. Start talking to people. Because if you actually do that and stop the whole thing about I can't find anyone. No, you just don't want to find anyone because you're hoping Professor Black Truth will ride in on a white horse into your town and say, I have come to Schenectady, New York. I have come to Los Angeles to build. That's what you're hoping for. If there is any lesson that we should have learned from the failure of the civil rights movement, it is the fallacy of waiting for some workhorse who is going to pull the wagon of Black empowerment to freedom. That's not going to happen. This is the problem with having resistance that has a leader, or everybody's going to get behind the leader. That does not work. What you get behind is the code. The code is the leader. Don't wait for me or anybody else to show up where you are. Start working where you are, and you will be surprised how many people, many of whom are going to surprise you, come out of the woodwork and say, we were waiting for somebody to do this. And this is not to say that it's going to be an uninterrupted success story. We're going to have setbacks. There's going to be a couple of L's along the way. But here's the thing, when we start fighting, we start actually getting some W's. And that's new for us. We've been taking L after L after L. We've been taking nothing but L's. So that shouldn't scare you. What should scare you is that you don't get off your butt and decide to fight for some of those wins, because you can have them. You just can't have them for free. And nobody else is going to get it for you. Once you internalize that, then you start building where you are. Why is it important to build where you are? Black people are constantly asking others to do things for us that we are capable of doing for ourselves. A lot of people wanted for Dr. John Henrik Clarke to the man was in his freaking 70s, and they were basically asking him if he was going to be leading them. The man had more days behind him than in front of them. If you start building locally, then you stop asking other people to basically lead you. And what happens is you start promoting the ideology of the leader itself. And that's what I hope the Black people will do. Let's stop worrying about whether or not the Democrats are going to do. I'm far more interested in what we are doing, because that's going to be what ultimately forces others to have to come to terms with us.
Absolutely. Professor, your wisdom and example are much appreciated. And I know the room agrees. I posted your channel. Y'all, his Cash App and other ways to show your support are linked there. He's very shy about that, but you should definitely show your support, because I think lip service is weak. But that's just me. To the room, tonight was a night of learning, and I want to thank everybody who joined us. I know that sometimes we move through life on autopilot with this tunnel vision, and these other people skate past us because we're not paying attention. Professor, if you had any final thoughts, I don't know if you had any, or if you,
Oh,
I don't.
As far as final thoughts goes, I'm glad that we've had so many people who have joined into this live stream. This is only the second one that I've done. It's extremely, extremely rare for me to, peel my eyeballs away from whatever book it is that I'm looking into, or whatever it is that whoever I'm going to give a video shanking to. It's very difficult for me to peel my eyes away from that. But whenever I do, I always, always want to make sure people understand that I am grateful for the last 15 years that they've been listening to me. I hope that you've gotten as much out of it as I've gotten from the people who I've learned from. I learned from the comments that you guys leave. I learned from the other videos that you guys have posted. I learned from what you guys do. I've never said that I'm sitting here, the great Karnak on top of a mountain handing down pearls of wisdom. No, I'm a student just like you are. I'm learning, as Neely Fuller said, I'm learning just like you are. But I hope that whatever it is that I've shared with you, I hope that you found it to be valuable. I hope that you found it to be inspiring, because that's ultimately what I think the message should be. Yes, we are in a fight, but it's a fight that we can win. And yeah, it feels lonely, especially if you're the first person trying to put down those few stakes. Being a pioneer is not a group sport. Pioneering is not for the group. The group of people are going to sit at home. They ain't going to bust a grape. The pioneers are going to be out there. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be perilous. It's going to be treacherous, but it's also going to be rewarding if you stick to it. And I hope that that's the message that you take away from this.
Absolutely. It's lonely outside, but once we're all of our squares are solid. All of the links are solid. People are out here trying to link with weak links, and that doesn't work. So I appreciate everybody who participated in the space. If you added your thoughts, your thoughtful comments were welcome. If you asked questions that you already knew the answer to, well, he's consistent, right? I mean, that's got to go for something. It does for me, because I think that we need examples like that.
Well, let me,
Um,
if I may, address that for a moment. As far as the answers that I give, keep in mind, I don't do politically oriented entertainment. And when a lot of people ask questions, it's kind of like they're looking for some new material, if you will, which is what you would expect from the latest episode of, a sitcom or something like that. But when it comes to the fight that we're in, we know exactly what it is. And the main thing is to actually put action behind the words. We've been having that happen, and I hope that we get more of that, but it's going to depend on what the group does. And if the group makes up their minds, we have resigned ourselves to the fact that we will have to sacrifice for what we need. We've made up our minds that the reward is certainly better than where we are right now. We're going to start putting boot to behinds, and a lot of these people who started talking all crazy to us, they're going to start running for cover. But that depends on what the group does. So I hope that everybody here, I hope that you renew and that you reinforce and that you get back to those core principles of what it is that we're supposed to be doing. First of all, the leader is the code. Stop looking for Professor Truth. Stop looking for somebody else to do it for you. Second of all, build where you are. Because once you get into the practice and the habit of doing that, you're going to have a lot less patience for the people who start telling you what can't be done. You're going to start doing things and you won't be listening to anymore to the people who say what can't be done.
Absolutely. Boots to behind. I just love how you word things sometimes, and I think that that's good. We should be able to, talk without using profanity, but sometimes I have issues. To the room, this has been fun, right? I told you it might be fun, and I'm glad y'all joined us tonight. Y'all be safe out in these streets, and the professor always reminds us to keep our power tools at the ready because these people aren't playing fair. I'm just Eve, and for real, y'all know it's not just me, right? Salute to the Black family. That's power.